That's fucking minging, though.
Welcome to the party, pal!
Hello and welcome to another edition of the ROKER RAPPORT Player Ratings Podcast. It's me, Jimmy Loast, in the hot seat today, and I'm amazed that I'm talking to you after a defeat in Lee Johnson's first game in charge of Sunderland to Wigan Athletic, bottom of the league of all clubs going into today's fixtures. To try and make sense of it all with me, I've got the interview maestro of ROKER RAPPORT, Mr. Christopher Wynn, with us. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad. Thanks for that introduction.
Yeah, well, you've earned your stripes over lockdown. You've earned your stripes this year for sure. And also joining me is one of our tactics writers. It's Philip. How you doing?
I'm slightly worse than I was just under 2.5 hours ago, but apart from that, I'm good.
It really hasn't sunk in. I'm really still in a total state of shock. I mean, Chris, how are you feeling? We're recording about 20 minutes after full-time whistle's gone.
I don't know. I'm kind of, I don't know. I'm not angry like you said. I think similar to what you described, where there's no anger yet. I think because he's had a couple hours in the job and it looked pretty much what we've seen all season. They got a goal, which some teams haven't done against us, and they got a goal and were able to defend it. But I mean, in terms of kind of our style of play, I think a lot of the players were still locked into Parky ball. So it just, I think it's shown everybody how much work Lee Johnson's got to do with the team.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. I mean, it is just still death by crossing. It's cross after cross after cross.
Did you see that stat, Jimmy, after the game, just on that? It was successful crosses, apparently, from the start I saw. It was 6 out of 47.
47's a hell of a lot. That's a hell of a lot. I mean, what did you see? How much of this do you think is the players being preconditioned to play old school football? How much is personnel? What did you make of it?
To be honest, I think it was a Phil Parkinson team, but in a different formation in many ways. I think he's sort of gone in there, he hasn't had a training session, and he's went, look, which are my most experienced players who I can say, you're playing right wing, you're playing left wing, and they basically know roughly what to do. But other than that, it was basically a Phil Parkinson team. I think it's probably not that much different from the team Phil Parkinson actually played in his first game. He went sort of 4-3-3 and did a similar thing, and also got beat. And nothing's changed really.
There's so many questions I want to ask. There's so much I want to go into. We've got the whole Jack Ross dilemma of can Mcguire and Mcgee play together, but sadly, the Bromley brothers are going to be covering that tomorrow, and we've got to give quick fire player ratings. I'll give you a nice easy one to start, Chris. Lee Burgeon goal. Didn't really have a lot to do, did he?
No, he had no chance with the goal. Didn't really have anything else. There was quite a lot of... First half, they had a few corners. He flapped at a couple of them. Didn't quite kind of make a couple of them that he came out for. So for that reason, I kind of dropped him down to a 5, but not for the goal. I don't think he stood a chance with the goal. It was a brilliant finish, by the way, from the young lad, Joseph. Looks a player, him as well.
Any disagreement?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with what you said. I've been a bit more generous and given him a 6, but he couldn't do anything about the goal. And other than that, he was pretty quiet.
I gave him a 6 as well on the rating. So I'll throw it straight back to you, Philip. What do you do with Colin McLaughlin?
I actually did exactly the same. I gave him a 6 as well. I think it's quite hard with McLaughlin because I don't think he was great trying to overlap Mcguire. I think he'll be much better if sort of Gooch or Diamond's playing in front of him, and he can kind of play a bit more conservative. But I think as far as Conor McLaughlin's performances go, I think that's about as good as it gets. Pretty solid. Give him a 6.
Yeah, I had him down as a 5. I thought early on, and it's funny because it's going to be a repeating pattern, I think, in my comments that I've got for pretty much all of the players, bar one or two. That first 10-15 minutes, I thought McLaughlin actually started to, he really started to go on the overlap. He looked lively. He looked like he wanted the ball. He showed for it. And then after about 10-15 minutes, it just kind of died off. It just... I don't know what happened. It's just like a switch flick. And yeah, I mean, it was after that, I mean, it was a kind of a typical McLaughlin performance in terms of defending, but he didn't really make any effort to get forward, which was weird because I was really encouraged early on. I thought, oh, McLaughlin's giving it a go here. And then after that, he got a bit sloppy and gave the ball away a couple of times. So yeah, I had him down as a 5.
I actually put in the official ratings, which are up live right now on ROKER RAPPORT.
The official ratings.
The
I know
official.
I said that, and I saw your reaction, Chris, and I was like, "Oh no, I've overstepped the mark here. I'm definitely going to regret that one." But yeah, no, in the ratings for the site, I gave him a 4, but I pretty much said the same thing. Started the game really well because he's a good technical footballer. Like when he gets the ball, he's got an all right first touch, but yeah, old bad habits, balls into the channel to no one. Bad passes that don't come off. And yeah, just like you mentioned, Chris, general sloppiness that infected the whole team.
Yeah, lazy crossing as well, which I'm sure we'll come back to.
Bailey Wright then, Chris, what you do for him?
Bailey Wright, I had Bailey Wright, and I feel really harsh, but I mean, essentially Bailey Wright lost us the game. I had him, I've got him, and I feel really bad for doing it because I think Bailey Wright's been one of our best players, and I was trying to think if it was Flanagan, how harsh would I be? Because it was Flanagan, and it might be a ridiculous way of thinking about it, but I had Bailey Wright down as a 4 because basically he essentially lost us the game with that error on the edge of the box, and he didn't have too much to do, but a couple of times he just looked awkward on the ball, and I don't know what it was with him today. There was something not quite right about him, especially when he was facing his own goal. A couple of times I just felt a bit uncomfortable with him when he was kind of being closed down when he was going towards our own goal, and I thought something's going to happen every time he did it. And he just seemed to think he had acres of time and space on the edge of the box, which you don't often do when you're in those sort of positions, and it's a bit of an uncharacteristic one for Bailey Wright. So unfortunately, I think he's been great this season, but he lost us. He kind of, well, I'm going to say cost us a point because I don't think we would have scored. But yeah, I had him down as a 4 today.
Exactly the same. I've gone for a 4 as well. I think just like Chris says, he's made the mistake for the only goal of the game, and like Burge, he's been pretty untested for the rest of it, I'd say.
I had him as a 5, but similar. I already regret not giving him a 4. I did flag up that he's giving off Wes Brown vibes to me now, in the sense that you watch him play and you're like, this guy's really good. This guy's good at everything. This guy's great. And then all of a sudden you'll have a spasm and it costs you a goal and you're like, what? Like, where did that come from? He looks so comfortable, and then all of a sudden it's like, what are you doing? But yeah, no, he passing not as good as usual, bit lightweight.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. He played in the 4 today, and he's looked really comfortable with 2 centre-halves either side of him. And it'll be interesting that if we do move forward with the 4, how he translates his form in the early part of the season in a 3 into that 4. So that might be interesting to see.
Yeah, no, you're kind of wondering, he was so good in the early games. What's the catch? Why is he at Sunderland? Why is he in League One? And I think a lot of people pointed to his injury record, but maybe there's a lack of athleticism there. Maybe there's a lack of pace, and maybe that's going to be something to watch over the coming games, because it's 3 games in a row now where he's cost us a goal in really, really weird circumstances. So it's a growing issue. Philip, I'll throw over to you with Tom Flanagan.
Yeah, I've gone for a 5 for Tom Flanagan. I think not that he made any major mistakes, but I just hate it whenever anyone's running at him. I think especially in the first half, I think we looked quite open, and every time someone ran at Tom Flanagan, I just thought goal, or something's going to happen. I think that's not really a great quality to have in a centre half, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know whether it was the change in the system or what, but I completely agree, Phil. I mean, I had him down as a 5 as well, but I just think every time they seem to try and hit us on the break, we just looked a bit flaky at the back, and you thought they've got half a chance. Every time they got near, within kind of 20, 25 yards of our box, you just thought that there's gaps and the spaces opening up. I'm just hoping those gaps kind of close up the longer that if we're going to stick with the 4, then I think Lee Johnson needs to get on the training ground again, because these have had 12 months of Phil Parkinson drilling the back 3 system into them. So I just hope it's a case of time to kind of get used to it.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add on Flanagan, really. I gave him a 6. I've been accused of being too harsh on him in the past. Maybe I've been too kind this time, but I don't feel strongly enough about it to argue the case. So I'll move straight on to Denver Hume. Only played for 30 minutes today before he got injured, Chris, but what do you make of those 30 minutes?
I was really encouraged earlier on. I know there was a few comments who were saying people were disappointed with him, but I thought at first 15 minutes, and again, I said earlier, I think it was, you could maybe put the whole team into this bracket, but first 15 minutes, I thought the link up with Mcgee down the left-hand side, I thought we could really have something here. I thought that they looked like they were on the same wavelength. They were playing each other in. I think even Mcgee came back, and I think he enjoyed, because he probably hasn't played with Denver Hume for quite a while. So I think Denver Hume's actually, his game's come on since Mcgee was last in the setup, and I just think that they kind of clicked. And I know he went off injured, but again, after the first 15 minutes, Denver Hume and the whole team started to fade, so the tempo kind of dropped, which was unfortunate. But there's encouraging signs. Unfortunately, we'll have to see how bad this hamstring injury is.
Philip, how about yourself?
Yeah, pretty similar. I've given him a 6. He played half an hour. That's just about average. The link up between Mcgee and Hume's really interesting, because I think Hume did get exposed quite a bit when Jack Ross was the manager. But I think there's a couple of things there. One, Mcgee leaving him exposed also gives Hume loads of freedom to just have the run of the left-hand side. And also he's just played sort of 12 months as a wing-back on his own on the left. So he's like Chris says, his game has definitely come on since Aidan Mcgee has played in front of him. And I think that should be a good partnership going forward.
I think I forgot to say, actually, I gave him a 6 as well. I think I forgot to say what mark I gave him.
I didn't clock that, so I'm glad you did, Chris. 6 as well. I was hovering between a 6 and a 5, because he did run out of position just before their goal. I mean, was it Skowa that gave it away? It was someone else that gave it away in the build-up, but then Hume kind of runs out and takes himself out of the game. But yeah, no, like you said, I think you both nailed the main point, is that Hume now should be a player who plays well with Mcgee. Like, Mcgee, in a way, ended Reece James's Sunderland career, because Reece James had all this space and he had no idea what to do with it. A more dynamic player like Denver Hume should thrive. He should really thrive in that area, and it's a real shame that maybe we're not going to see that for a few weeks. But McFadzean's got some of the same qualities, so maybe he can kick and improve from that. We'll move on to Grant Ledbetter. Philip, what did you make of his performance?
I thought he was really, really exposed in the first half. I think the way we played that 4-3-3, I think Skowa and Power were basically playing as two number 10s. They were quite often I'd look up and they were both in the box at the same time. The cross would be cleared and then it would be just Grant Ledbetter on his own, with his aging legs, and he was really exposed. But I think overall in the second half, I think Power played a little bit deeper, and I think he looked pretty solid. He also had a lovely ball into Mcgee in the first half. I think his passing was good throughout. So I've given him a 6, because overall he's generally pretty average, and his poor first half wasn't really his fault. It was more to do with the other two midfielders.
Chris, what did you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was, in a lot of ways, it was a typical kind of performance from Ledbetter, sitting in front of a back 4 instead of a back 3. But I think it was a similar role to what he's been playing for most of the season. And again, I'm going to repeat myself, but it was first 15 minutes he was playing 2-touch, and it was high tempo, and he was switching the play, and you could see that the options were there. And I don't know whether it was maybe the options weren't there after that opening period, or whether he stopped playing with that high tempo, because it just faded out. And then after that, unfortunately, Ledbetter just moved the ball too slowly. When Wigan got their shape back, there was no quickness to it. The tempo didn't go up in the final third. Ledbetter's balls, you could kind of read them. I mean, we knew where he was going to pass it kind of before Ledbetter did in some cases. So, I mean, I had him down as a 5 just because I thought he was dictating play, but he wasn't doing it quick enough for us.
Yeah, no, very, very similar to Chris. He was one of the last people to be knocked down to a 5 on my scorecard. I think it was one crossfield ball that got cut out, and I was like, oh, for God's sake, and just deleted the 6 from the article. But yeah, you nailed it. I thought it was more egregious against Burton, the sort of slow-paced, Ledbetter walking the ball around, not playing with any tempo. But yeah, no, I completely echo what you guys are saying. Chris, straight back to you. Max Power, what do you make of him?
Max Power, again, similar to Grant Ledbetter. I think it's kind of, it's a repeat of what we've seen again in the early part of this season. A lot of bluster, a lot of kind of puff and puff, no end product. He just then had periods where he just completely went missing. There was periods of the game where I just thought, well, you forget that Max Power's playing and you don't know what he... And again, and I think this is one of the things Lee Johnson's going to sort out. I mentioned it earlier in the season that Max Power doesn't seem to know what he is anymore. And he doesn't know whether he's this kind of ball-playing midfielder to pick out passes. He doesn't know if he's this box-to-box, get in late on the end of things. So that's one thing that Lee Johnson's going to have to sort out, because a Max Power for me needs to get involved in the game more than he is, and I had him down as a 5.
Philip?
Yeah, I had him as a 5 as well for pretty much exactly the same reasons. I don't know what he is. He doesn't know what he is. He's played pretty much every midfield role since he joined. And to be honest, he's never actually reached the heights since before that first red card. When he was a box-to-box player. I think probably the goal he scored on during the week's probably the best of Max Power. But I just think he can't really play alongside Skowa, because I think that's kind of probably Skowa's best role as well. So I'd be probably picking one or the other and going with a midfield 2, to be honest, if we do shift to 4-4-2, which it looks like Lee Johnson prefers.
Yeah, no, I think you've nailed it there. We know that he wants to be Steven Gerrard. We know that he wants to, but Gerrard came through in the age of 4-4-2, and it's harder. There's not many box-to-box midfielders around. Does he score enough to justify it? Yeah, and I think you've hit on a lot of the good points. I did give him a 6 in the player ratings. I don't know if I was feeling nice. I don't know if it was because I liked some of his early passing, but I echo what you said. So spiritually, I'm with you, even if people might go see a 6 next to his name if they want to on the website. So that brings us onto the forwards. That brings us on to the man of the hour, actually, doesn't it? Mr. Aidan Mcgee. Chris, I'll let you go first on him.
He came in and I thought he looked straight away our best attacking outlet. I thought he went straight into it. We gave him the ball. He wanted it. He made himself available. First 10 minutes, I think he put in about 6 or 7 crosses in the first 10 minutes. And they were all kind of dinked in and looking quite dangerous, hoping somebody would get on the end of it, not this kind of hit and hope that we've been doing in terms of crosses under Parkinson so far. I thought first 10 minutes, I thought, oh, here we go, we're in for a good afternoon. He might grab a couple and all this sort of stuff. He should have done better after 20 minutes. Good chance with his left foot in the box. I jumped up and cheered and scared my kids. But yeah, that kind of hit the side net, and I thought that was in. Should have really done better there. Then he had a chance with about 25 minutes left. With the keeper save. Well, I think he was the only one who really took a shot. And he was the only one who looked like he wanted to take a shot. So, I mean, nobody else seemed to want to score. He was the only one who looked kind of positive and that's what it just showed that's what you get from Aidan Mcgee, and I had him as a 6. Yep,
I had him as a 6 as well. The best thing you can say about him is probably that he looked like Aidan Mcgee, not Aidan Mcgee that hadn't played for a year. He kind of floats in and out the game a little bit. He kind of wanders about the pitch. But when he gets on the ball, when he gets his fullback one-on-one, he always looks dangerous. And he's going to have a shot from distance, and he's probably going to get, some evil eyes off forwards in better positions. But that's kind of what you put up with if you have him in the team, because he will create stuff and he will score goals himself. So
yeah, I actually was a little bit more disappointed than you guys. I remember the poor giveaway, which led to Kai Naismith trying to buy a penalty off Tom Flanagan. I think the big surprise for all of us there was Tom Flanagan didn't foul him like he did at Gillingham. He actually managed to avoid it. I had him as a 4. I was wanting a bit more. I do echo your larger point about McGeady coming back in, about maybe him offering the creativity. I think Chris's point about having someone that actually wants to shoot is a valuable one. I think him and Mcguire are the only ones who are able to create any space for themselves, and really that's going to be a big thing going forward. Collins mentioned it in commentary as well. It's like shots in the box, it's balls into the box, it's playing into feet, it's trying to be a bit less obvious, a bit less predictable than we have been in the last few weeks. But yeah, we'll move on to Chris Mcguire, and I'll let you go first on him, Philip.
Chris Mcguire, I've gone for a 5 for Chris Mcguire. I think that actually might be a little bit generous, if I'm honest. There's something about him at the minute that it's not right. He's not playing well. He seems under absolutely no pressure for his place. I think that's probably why he's not playing very well. I think he's the type of player who plays better when he gets dropped. And I think he could do with being dropped, but he just sort of never really got in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo that as well. I've got that he was busy opening 20 minutes again, but that way I could apply that to at least half the team. He really looked up for it though. He was chasing down. I know there was one period in the first 20 minutes where the ball, Wigan were knocking it around the back, and I think it went back to the keeper, and Mcguire chased it for about must have been for about 40, 50 yards, and I thought, oh, Mcguire's really up for it today. But again, just kind of reflecting the team, he just kind of faded, and a bit like Max Power, like I said, he just drifted out of the game slowly, and every so often he popped up with the ball. He tried a couple of back heels which didn't come off, and his head just kind of dropped, and he just went missing. I had him as a 5, which I thought I was being quite kind of generous with that, to be honest.
I was more Rufus than both of you. I went 4, and the only other thing I'd add is the crossing and decision making in the first 20 minutes. He got the ball in a lot of good areas, and it was overhit crosses. It was trying to cut back in. It was not releasing the pass quickly enough. He annoyed me a lot, because even when we were playing well, he was the individual that kind of held us back a bit. We'll move quickly on to Josh Skowa, and I'll let you go first on him, Chris.
Again, I thought the last couple of games he's had in that position, which looks like kind of an inside right position, which is further forward than Ledbetter. Although it seems later in the game he came back and played alongside Ledbetter, which I thought was weird, because early on I thought he was making some half-decent runs. He looked energetic. He was getting forward. Again, similar to what I've said, he then kind of didn't get the ball for periods, didn't go looking for it, and then ended up alongside Ledbetter when we needed a goal. And I don't know whether that was by instruction or whether he just did that naturally. But that was a bit odd. But and another 5 for Skowa, purely because of that opening period where I thought he looked half decent, but disappeared after that.
Philip, much to add on Skowa?
Yeah, not really. I've given him a 6 because I don't think he was any worse than Ledbetter, who I've also given a 6. But he was also unlucky not to score with that header that the keeper did well to tip over. Yeah,
no, there's a wider conversation to be had about him and his best position and all that, but we're short on time. I gave him a 4. We'll move on to Mr. Will Grigg. What do you make of him, Philip?
Another 6 from me. I think we've given a lot of 6s. I think that sort of sums up the performance. It's pretty sort of average, I suppose. I think he seemed really lively in the first half. I think he was in particular pressed really well in those sort of first 15, 20 minutes, but he never really had a clear chance, and he was very quiet before he got taken off in the second half.
Chris?
Yeah, and again, I feel like I've been slightly generous, but I've given him a 5, and that's purely based on effort. I think because he looked like he really wanted it. He looked like he was going to go for the ball. He looked like he was making the runs. He ended up coming towards the ball too much because he was almost trying too hard, which really kind of miffed me off because I wanted him to run in the opposite direction. So I've given him a 5, but nothing stuck to him. I mean, he was poor generally when the ball was played into him, but I just gave him a 5 because you could just see he really wanted it.
Yeah, fair enough. I wasn't expecting this actually. It's normally the other way around, but I've gone 4. The substitutes, like we made 4 of them. I'm struggling to remember much noteworthy that any of them did. Is there anyone who stood out to you, Philip?
I'd say Diamond was a better option on the right than Mcguire, if not really by him doing much, but just by being a proper winger in front of Conor McLaughlin. I think McFadzean's quite a big downgrade off Hume based on this performance as well. He just doesn't have the directness that Hume has.
Yeah, and I'd maybe mention just Danny Graham and the fact that he came on with 20 odd minutes to go, and he looked like he'd already played 70 minutes. like Will Gregg was more mobile than a fresh Danny Graham, even though Will Gregg had played 70 minutes. I mean, why not play 2 of them up front and get 2 of them up top? I mean, I mean, we'll see. I mean, hopefully it was a case that Lee Johnson was maybe being advised by others, but we'll see.
Yeah. Danny Graham's Danny Graham. I'm sick of seeing him fall over. I wasn't expecting him to fall over as much as he did, and he's not a fan. Quickly, man of the match. Who do you go for, Chris?
Wow, that's a tough one. I'd go Mcgee. He was my 6 that I think I had, and I had Hume as a 6, but he only played half an hour, so Mcgee was the only one who looked like he was going to do anything for us, so I'd have Mcgee.
Philip?
I'd say there's a lot of players who were pretty average. I'd probably say maybe Skowa because he nearly got on the end of that one in the box, but could be anyone really.
Yeah, I was having a panic at 70 minutes when I realised I hadn't wrote anyone down as a man of the match, and it was like, I have no idea what to do with this.
Well, you threw me there because I hadn't thought about man of the match at all because we were that poor. I just thought, I hadn't even thought about that.
maybe the fourth time this season. It's happened way more than I expected to this season, where I'm just like, oh my God, I've got to put a name here, and whoever I put here, they're not deserving. I went Power. I can't defend it. I don't have any reasoning for it. No one was that good, but Power's up there on the site, and that's that.
Pin the
Boys,
tail on the donkey.
yeah, exactly that. Boys, thanks so much for joining me this evening. Thanks everybody for listening. The full recap and the full breakdown on everything Sunderland will be with you at some point early next week. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and guys, enjoy the rest of your evening.